Alright, hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are here to discuss a very hot topic within the Wuthering Waves community as of late with a certain character. People have really started to make a fuss about this character once again, that we had the same discussion back when she first released about her kit and how it's not exactly good and it's a bad thing. And while yes, I do somewhat agree, I don't think her kit is the main issue. And we're going to get into that here in a little bit. But first of all, let's just make sure we got all our ducks in a row and figure out what exactly we're talking about. And no, it is not this character. Carlotta is perfect. Nothing needs to be changed about her. How about Zani today? So just to make sure everyone's caught up to speed, Zani has been a very hot topic in Wuthering Waves lately due to a certain content creator and a bunch of people discussing about the viability of Zani in TOA and how well she actually works, whether or not you need her for quick swap or being able to clear without quick swap. And it's been a whole hullabaloo, I don't even know what you want to call it, fiasco. There you go. It's been a whole fiasco. So I'm here to give my own opinion on it because I feel like there's one key topic that a lot of people are overlooking, and that is that the devs kind of set up Zani to fail in a way. Now, I don't think they meant to do it intentionally, but they definitely didn't try to fix the issue. At least they didn't. They kind of half-assed it, is the best way to put it. Let's go ahead and start talking about this. So to start off with, for those who don't use Zani, for those who don't use Zani, or aren't as familiar with her kit, her entire kit revolves around Spectro-Frazzle, and basically the appliance of Spectro-Frazzle, because she gets more damage off of it, and it also powers up her Forte. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see her Forte bar, correct? And you see the dotted line. The dotted one is a Forte bar that Zani herself is able to fill out without needing the help of others. She can fill it out by using basic attacks, using counters, just hitting the enemy, and once it's filled, she gets a charged resonant skill that she can use to apply one stack of Spectro-Frazzle. Keep that in mind, only one stack. The bar below it, the full bar that's blank right now, that is her Blaze bar, and her Blaze bar gets filled when you apply Frazzle to an enemy. And the more that it's filled, the more attacks she can perform in her transformation state off of her liberation. I'm sure you've seen it already, her with the glowing hair, the ripped clothes, the big sword. When in that form, the amount of attacks she can do is completely dependent on how much she has managed to build up her Blaze bar, which is built by applying Spectro-Frazzle stacks. Now, for each, I believe, we can check right here actually, just to make sure I'm getting this right. The max her bar can reach is 150 when transformed and 100 outside of transformation. So we see here, yes, increasing max blaze from 100 to 150. And when she transforms, she gets 50. So basically you want to fill it up to 100 before you transform. That would be the simple game plan in like a 1-2-3 rotation, right? So 1-2-3 rotation would be like Rover to Phoebe to Zani. But here's the thing. You need characters that apply Frazzle. Because as I mentioned earlier, Zani is only able to apply one stack of Frazzle by herself. Nowhere else in her kit is she able to apply Frazzle, only off of that charge resonance skill that she gets. And that is a lot of people's main issue, is that Zani is way too reliant on other characters, not only for her damage, but for her kit to even work properly. She needs other teammates. She can't work. It's not even that she can't work solo, it's the fact that she can't work fully without other Frazzle appliers. And when she released, there was only 2 characters in the game that were able to do that. And that was Spectro Rover and Phoebe. And Phoebe, obviously, being her best slot, considering that Phoebe is the best in the game at applying Spectro-Frazzle. Plus, she also reduces Spectro resistance for enemies. She's able to just constantly apply Frazzle without using an ult. She can quick swap with Zani. Like, she's literally meant for Zani. She is Zani's best support. And then the free-to-play option would be Spectra Rover, who, while not as perfect as Phoebe, he can, in case you're playing as female Rover, they can still apply enough frazzle for Zani to work perfectly fine. Some people like to argue that Rover isn't enough, but they are enough. You just have to learn how to play as them. It's not as simple as with Phoebe, but they definitely are enough. But that's it. There's no one else in the game that can apply frazzle at the time of her release. Now, granted, 2 weeks later, we would get Chacona, and she is also able to apply frazzle. But this is where I think the main issue lies. Now, could they have done something to fix Zani's kit and not have her be so over-reliant on frazzle and her teammates? Yes, and we'll get to that later. But for now, let's go back to what I just said about Chacona. Chacona released, and can't switch to her, but Chacona released, she's an arrow resonator. She's meant to help arrow damage users. She applies arrow erosion with her ult, all this stuff. And then there's this one extra little part in her kit where she can apply frazzle instead of erosion. The only reason why this is in her kit is for Zani. There's legitimately no other reason for this to be in her kit, because nowhere else in her kit does she help Spectro users. Her entire kit is focused around arrow damage, arrow erosion, arrow resonators, and then one little extra line, one little extra ability to apply frazzle. And she doesn't even apply it all that well. Now, I think it's kind of fun to use Chacona with Zani to apply frazzle because it's a constant over time application. But if you're wanting to use Zani to clear TOA and stuff like that, for the casual player, and I know some people don't like this argument, but at the end of the day, 80% of the Wuthering Waves player base, 80%, probably more like 90% of most gacha games are going to be casual people. So you do have to take that into consideration, because when the developers are making these gacha kits and how these characters play, that's who they're keeping in mind. They're keeping in mind the casual fan base. Now, they might add in some stuff, some extra, advanced maneuvers for people to find, but if you ask developers, I promise you they're going to tell you, for the most part, we develop for the casual audience. And it is hard to recommend to a casual player to use Chacona to power up Zani, when the only thing she does is apply frazzle and gives her no other benefits. It's not a good recommendation to give. I feel like if you're giving that recommendation to a casual player, you're kind of setting them up to fail a little bit, especially if they're trying to clear high-level endgame, like floor 3 or floor 4 of TOA with Zani, and that's what gives them a bad impression of the character. And here's the issue. We're almost a full year out from Zani's release. I think she came out the 28th of April, if I remember right. 28th to 30th, around there. So we're like 25-ish, 26 days away from that. There have been no other characters released in that time period that apply frazzle. It is still just Phoebe, Spectral Rover, and Chacona. Makes no sense to me why they refuse to give Zani extra help, because they made her so reliant on frazzle itself. Now, have there been more negative status units since then? Yes, we've had Cardathea, we've had Chisa, we've had Imyth, we've had Bueling, but none of them are frazzle. They are Electro Flare, Havoc Bane, Fusion Burst. Now, Chisa can help Zani with the Havoc Bane, but at the end of the day, Zani wants Spectro Frazzle. Only Spectro Frazzle. And this is the thing that I'm talking about, is that they've released Zani into the game when the game was not ready for Zani. And this is just a greater issue in whole with Wuthering Waves, is that they like to introduce mechanics too quickly without setting up the game or the player base for it correctly. Because with negative status has a really bad rep with the community, because it hasn't really been applied to the game all that greatly. Because let's go back to when 2.0 released. We've had this whole thing about, oh, look at all these negative statuses that are going to be added to the game for the player to use. Because we've had negative statuses from enemies since the release of the game, if I remember correctly. They've always been able to apply fire damage to us, they've been able to freeze us, they've been able to shock us. This has all been in the game for the enemies since day one. But for the player base, it wasn't until 2.0, 1.4 when they finally really started to talk about it. And then in 2.0, we get our first negative status user in Rover, with Spectrofrazzle being added into their kit. And then we go to 2.1, we get Phoebe with Spectrofrazzle as well. But then we wait until 2.3, the anniversary patch, to get Zani, our first negative status DPS. Phoebe was a DPS with negative status, but at the end of the day, she was really meant to be a support for Zani, and the DPS mode that she has was really just put in as a way to kind of hold her over until Zani released. Because if Phoebe only had the support mode when she first released, she would not have sold very well, her release would have been very bad, there would have been no use for her really in the game at all for almost 2 to 3 months, which some people would argue is what happened to Chisa, but I would argue Chisa had a much better release, considering the fact that she could have worked in the Cardathea team, she could have worked on the Zani team, but people already hated that Chisa was kind of homeless for so long, and just now she's about to get her first real team with Koyuki and Dania coming out, and then with Aime finally getting her Fusion Burst team. So that's, if that happened to Phoebe, it would have been even worse than what the reception was to Chisa. But regardless, we get to 2.3, we get Zani, and then we get Chacona, then we get Cardathea in 2.4, and then we wait all the way till 2.8 to get Chisa. And at this point, we're almost about to enter 3.0, a full year later, after this whole talk about negative statuses, and we've had 4 characters. And we've had only 4 negative statuses in Frazzle, Air Erosion, Havoc Bane, and Electro Flare from Bueling. But in reality, only 2 of those even got explored in Erosion and Frazzle, as Havoc Bane really didn't have much use with only Chisa, and Electro Flare with Bueling, no one really takes advantage of that. I mean, there's really nothing to take advantage of with it. And it just makes you wonder, why not release more Spectrofrazzle for Zani? The main issue people have with it is the fact that people feel like she is handcuffed to the hip. You know, handcuffed, tied at the hip, with duct tape and Gorilla Glue to Phoebe. That is how people feel about this character, due to the fact that her kit is so reliant on Frazzle, and the fact that her ultimate is even weaker and limited due to not having enough Frazzle on the team, because instead of being able to do 2 full combos in her ultimate, she'd only get like 1, and that's if you didn't do it correctly. So it's just like, people just ended up hating this character because of that. And even though, yes, like I said earlier, you can use Spectro Rover to power up Zani correctly and have her still be able to perform, it definitely took some more practice, and it took swapping, which some people are not very happy about, because like I said earlier, the whole debacle about Zani right now is that without quick swap, she's worthless, which is not true. But to say that she doesn't require switching is also a bit untruthful, because while yes, you can do a 1-2-3 rotation, 1-2-3 rotation with her, at this point in the game, you're not going to be clearing stuff with her, especially if you're not using Phoebe in a 1-2-3 rotation with Zani, with just only like Spectra Rover. You are going to struggle, especially if you really don't know what you're doing. And while me personally, I think that's fine at this point, people aren't really too happy about it. Like I said, casual audience. Plus there's also that whole misconception about quick swapping, switching, that people are like, they look to, like, people hear quick swap and their first thought is all those mono fusion clips of like Brant, Lupa, and Chongli all basically attacking at the same point, constantly switching every minute, or not every minute, but every second, constantly doing attack. Like, that is too much for people. Hell, that's too much for me, and I play Wuthering Waves quite a bit. I try to learn that stuff, and I still think it's too much. So when they hear quick swapping, instead of just thinking of, oh, you switch into Rover while Zani is automatically doing her Nightfall attack, you can switch to Rover and just drop his ultimate and then switch back to Zani. Super easy, nothing really to think about. That's not the first thing that comes to their mind when they hear quick swap. And that's just another misconception about Zani, is that she needs quick swap. I would argue that yes, she does need switching, but she doesn't need quick swap to work. And that's going to be something that's going to take a while to clear up with the general audience. But, I mean, you can't blame them for being mad, because Pearl has really done nothing to help Zani since she's released. They gave Chacona that Spectro Frazzle appliance as kind of like a backup. I feel like somewhere in the development team, someone realized, oh, without Phoebe, Zani can kind of struggle even with Spectro Rover. Oh, you know what? We have Chacona releasing in that same patch with her. Quick, just add Frazzle to her ultimate. Now, if Chacona actually had an ability that was like, oh, when applying Frazzle to enemies, when she's in her ult state, applying Frazzle, when you use her outro skill, she will grant like 15% Spectro damage bonus to the next incoming Resonator. Just that would have helped soften the blow quite a bit for Zani people who did not have Phoebe. But they didn't do that. It really does feel like an afterthought that they gave Chacona Spectro Frazzle, because it does feel like they were like, oh crap, we might have messed up here, let's just do this. And it hurts even more to see this happen when in the very next patch they released Cardathea, who is also reliant on a negative status in Arrow Erosion. But the reason why people weren't upset about it with Cardathea is that, one, she's able to apply it herself. Just off her Resonance skill, she's able to apply 2 stacks of Arrow Erosion in her base form. That's already to double what Zani can do with a charge Resonance skill. Meanwhile, Cardathea just gets it off her normal Resonance skill. Plus, Cardathea's transformation doesn't become limited due to not applying Arrow Erosion. She does less damage in that form, but she still has access to everything in that form. Imagine if Cardathea released, and instead of her form just being a permanent thing, her form only lasted for so long, depending on how much Arrow Erosion stacks you had, and its damage would also be reduced. You think people would have been fans of that? No, and that's exactly what happened to Zani. And to make matters worse, and this is why I keep thinking that the developers really set her up to fail, is that not only did Cardathea released right after Zani, with not having that same issue, she didn't have the same issue of her ultimate needing Arrow Erosion to even function, but she's also able to apply more Arrow Erosion stacks by herself than Zani is able to apply Spectral Frazzle stacks. So she's more self-sufficient than Zani is, but she also took one of Zani's teammates in Rover, because Rover got the Arrow form, and with that form, they are able to increase the stacks of Arrow Erosion, and they're also able to change any other negative status into Arrow Erosion. And this is the thing that I feel like should have been switched, because out of the 2 characters of Zani and Cardathea, Zani was the one that needed that more. Zani needed a Resonator that can change any negative status into Spectro Frazzle. If Arrow Rover was able to provide that for Zani, that would instantly make people have a lot less issues with her, because Chisa instantly becomes more useful. Fueling becomes an option now for Zani. And then you'll have another free-to-play character that can be used with her other than Rover now, since you'd be able to change the Electro Flare stacks from Fueling into Spectro Frazzle. And I'm going to be real honest here, I don't understand why they just don't let Fueling apply Spectro Frazzle and instead made her an Electro Flare support. Or just an Electro Flare user. Like, sure, in the future we'll probably get an Electro Flare user that might want to use Fueling, but for the time, Zani was the one more in need of that, so it always seemed weird to me that they didn't let Fueling apply Frazzle to let there be another free-to-play character. And honestly, with the way Fueling applies Frazzle, if she could do that with Spectro Frazzle, or not, with the way Fueling applies Electro Flare, If she could do that, but with Frazzle, Bueling and Rover themselves would have been more than enough for Zani players to use, because they would have been able to easily match the amount Phoebe can put out and be able to fill her entire transformation bar easily. So I feel like with Bueling, they really messed up by making her an Electro Flare character, which makes it even harder for Zani to get her identity or get her full abilities out. But yes, if we just had a Resonator where Spectral Rover was able to change negative statuses into Frazzle, just like the way Arrow Rover can do that to Erosion, that would have helped out Zani tremendously. And she was the one who needs it more rather than Cardithea, because Cardithea had Chacona, they have themselves that can apply Erosion, so it just felt so weird to have that. Plus, Arrow Rover was necessary for Chacona, because if I remember right, Arrow Rover increases the amount of stacks of Air Erosion that someone can apply to an enemy. Let me double check just to make sure. Let me double check here, just to make sure I'm not talking out of my ass. Let's double check to see if he has some type of increased stacks of Air Erosion somewhere in his kit. Let's see. Increase healing, damage. What does this do? No. Oh, right here, the Resonance skill where he removes all stacks of any other negative status and changes it to Air Erosion. Let's see, does he have an ability? Yep, right here, his outro skill. Increases the maximum stack of Air Erosion the target can receive by 3 for 10 seconds. Cardithea really needed that when she first released, unless you got her extra copies on her Resonance chain. So, Air Rover was very tied to Cardithea, which means you would have to take Rover off the Zani team. And if you didn't have Phoebe, you see the issue here? The Zani became practically worthless to a lot of people. Even to advanced players, not having any Frazzle appliers because you needed to put Air Rover with Cardithea, big issue. It becomes a big issue, and Zani basically becomes almost non-existent. Now, can you work with her without any Frazzle appliers? Yes. I've made videos about it. I even have a video where I try to play Zani without Phoebe, and does it work? Yes, it does work, and honestly, I find it fun to do that challenge. But like I said, the casual audience is not the audience that would like that type of stuff usually, and that is who these people have to develop for. This is who Kuro has to develop for and appeal to, because that is where the majority of the money is going to be coming from. It's from the casual audience, not the high-level advanced people who try to come up with every tech they can for all these Wuthering Waves characters. Not to say that Kuro doesn't try to appeal to those type of players as well, but at the end of the day, they want to make sure that the characters are simple enough and usable enough for anyone to just log in and just do a simple 1-2-3 rotation. So, I feel like I've kind of gotten my point across about how they kind of set up Zani to fail by just giving out Phoebe, Rover, and they're like, alright, there's their best slot team. We don't really have anyone else for her, and we're moving Rover over to Cardithea, and we're also having Chacona on Cardithea, and if you don't have Phoebe, or if you didn't get Phoebe, but you summoned for Zani, well, let's give Frazzle to Chacona. There we go. Now there's 3 Frazzle characters in the game. That's enough, right? And then they just stopped there. They just ended up stopping all the support for Zani. And that is why I'm saying he kind of set her up for fail, because not only did they drop her into the game when the game was not ready for a negative status DPS like her that doesn't only take their damage from negative statuses but is also fueled by it, they did not end up supporting her after her release. They were just like, here you go, she's got her best support. If you want to play her, get her support. If you don't, then don't summon for her. That's kind of what it feels like. And this all could have been avoided if they just made some minor changes to Zani's kit. Now, let's try to keep her still the same, right? We don't want to take away that identity of needing negative statuses to power up her ult, because if you do, she kind of ends up just playing like Cardithea, where the only thing that she needs negative status for is for DPS, just for her damage, not exactly power up. So that's another reason why they probably made this change to Zani is because they didn't want to release two back-to-back DPSs that were basically the same thing, just one was Frazzle and one was Air Erosion. So let's say we have to keep that part of Zani's kit, that she needs negative status, she needs Spectro Frazzle to increase her ult state. So let's keep that part of her kit. But let's take this back 1 year prior to before Zani released. Another Spectro DPS that also needed other characters, other team members to fill up their forte. Sure, some of you already know who I'm talking about, but we were talking about the first Sentinel Resonator in the game, Jinshi. Jinshi's forte gauge is charged from other characters attacking, and the more the characters attack, the more her Resonant skill nuke is charged up. And if people attack, she wants it to be attribute damage, and if they attack with coordinated attacks that are of a different attribute, she gets even more stacks. So if we have like more Teffy doing coordinated attacks with fusion, she gets more of her forte charge from that than she would from Sandwall doing a basic attack. Because one, it's a coordinated attack, and two, it's of a different attribute. So what if they had just applied this to Zani, where instead of needing it to be Frazzle, they made it instead where Zani's ultimate would charge more, her ultimate forte bar would charge more, depending on which negative status. So if it's any negative status, she would get 1 point. If it's Spectro Frazzle, she would get 3 or 5 points, whatever you want it to be. So that would still make it to where Phoebe is her best in slot support, Spectro Rover is still a super good option for her, but now Chacona could run with her without needing to use Frazzle, but using Frazzle would be a plus. Cardathea could work with her because Cardathea would apply Air Erosion, and that would give it to Zani. Arrow Rover and Cardathea could work together. Chisa would work even better because now the Havoc Bane would help charge up her ult. Bueling would work perfectly with her despite not having Frazzle because now she's applying a crap ton of Electro Flare. So it's just like they've already had the same issue with a previous Spectro DPS in Jinshi, and they had the perfect solution of just making sure that other attribute damage is still counted. So why is it for Zani they didn't just make it to where other negative statuses would also help? And that would not have made Zani overpowered in any way because her damage itself would still be contingent on Spectro Frazzle being on the enemy. So yes, while your ultimate would be fully charged and you'd be able to use it to its full advantage, as have many attacks as you want and not be limited, you'd still be doing less damage than if you would be with a Frazzle character, because instead of having Frazzle stacks on them, they would have Electro Flare or Havoc Bane, so that would be doing less damage. So it would be a nice balance, so just being able to charge Zani up with different negative statuses would not have made her overpowered in any way, shape, or form. I don't get why they didn't do that. That would have been such a simple solution. It still keeps Zani's identity of being a DPS that charges her ultimate through negative status. But no, they ended up saying she's only Frazzle. If it's not Frazzle, get the fuck out. It's basically what they said. So that is basically how I feel about the whole Zani kit issue. But let me get this straight. I still think she's a super fun character. She's a super fun character to play. She's a super good DPS still to this day. She can still clear content. Hell, clear Tower 4 with her, even though Tower 4 was meant for Echo skill users, so all the enemies had increased resistance to damage and stuff due to not being able to use, I think it was 5 Echo skills or 6 Echo skills to get rid of the resistance. They're only able to use 3. Zani was still able to clear with Rover and Phoebe. So she's still a good DPS. She still has one of the best teams in the game with Spectral Rover and Phoebe and a quick swap. But I'm not going to sit here and act like just because she works still to this day that Kuro did not mess up. Kuro did mess up with Zani, but I feel like it's less that they messed up with her kit and more that they just messed up with not giving her enough help. When they make such a restrictive kit, you have to have extra options. And that's why I still advocate for the release of 4 stars. People say, oh, we don't need 4 stars, just give us a free 5-star every once in a while, and I'll gladly get rid of or ignore the fact that we don't get 4 stars, but having 4 stars, having these free-to-play air quote options and 4 stars is great when you can't get characters like Phoebe, or when you get a character like Zani who has a very restrictive kit and you just need more options, but yet they don't provide them. It's just so ass backwards to me, but that's how I feel about this entire situation. I think I did a decent job of kind of explaining my point of view on things. I didn't make a script for this video, I'm sure that's very obvious. I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here. But overall, that is how I feel. Let's just recap real quick. Zani's kit is an issue. But the biggest issue is that Kuro just did not give her the right support. They did not prepare the game for her arrival, and they refuse and have not helped the game at all to further accommodate her since her release, or just help her a little bit more since her release. It just really just said, here you go, these are the only tools we're giving you. If you don't use these, then so be it. So here's hoping they kind of stop doing that. With Tomb Break, they've done a bit of a better job, though I still think it's weird that they released 2 Tomb Break supports before any DPS. And honestly, I think they missed a huge opportunity with not adding Tomb Break to Havoc Rover. The same way that Spectral Rover got Frazzle when you entered 2.0, I think that in 3.0 they should have gave Havoc Rover Tomb Break Rupture and Tomb Break Shifting, so that way you could get a free-to-play option to use from Mornay and Lene and get a taste of how Tomb Break works before Imyth and Luke released. I think that would have been a nice tradition to have, that at every single version that introduced a new mechanic, that the previous Rover would get an upgrade to give you a sneak peek or a free-to-play option for that certain mechanic. So 2.0 negative status, Spectral Rover, Spectral Frazzle. 3.0 Toon Break, Havoc Rover, Toon Rupture, Toon Shifting. 4.0, let's say they add Resonance Alteration. I don't know what that is, something I just came up with, but let's say they add that in 4.0, then you would give Arrow Rover the ability to do whatever Resonance Alteration would be. I think that would be a nice tradition to have, and also help keep the old Rover versions up to date and still be useful in the game for new players coming in. But regardless, I think that's a topic for another day. I think I've rambled on long enough. For anyone who's still watching, I greatly appreciate it. I would like to do more of these discussion videos where I just kind of shoot stuff from the hip and just kind of give my free thoughts, or my natural general thoughts about certain topics in this game. So if you guys like this kind of stuff, I guess you could almost say a podcast style type thing. Let me know. I would love to do more of these. I think it's always better to just talk straight from your heart. I feel like that's a little cliche to say, but straight from the brain, straight from the heart, rather than, you know, typing from a script and making sure everything is like correct and stuff. I think it's better just to get that natural feeling out. I'm not saying every video should be like this, but I think this type of video is always good every once in a while. But with that being said, let me know your thoughts about this whole Zani situation. What do you guys think about the character? How do you guys feel about the kit? Do you feel like Zani's kit itself is the main issue, or do you agree with me that while Zani's kit is an issue, the main issue was that Kuro just did not provide enough support for this type of kit in this game? But with that being said, I will see you all next time. The next Wuthering Waves video will probably be the 3.1 story, because I have just been slacking off on getting the story done, so we need to go ahead and do that, get that done, because the Segway story with Lucilia is about to come out, so keep an eye out for that on the channel. With that being said, I will see you all next time. Peace out.